I have the pleasure of representing the Krzysztof Penderecki Academy of Music in Krakow, and it's a profound honor to stand before you today to share my reflections on the mutual intertwining of music and dance within the medium of film. I will now outline the structure of my presentation. I will ground my reflections in Emil Jacques Dalcroze's concept of eurythmics and plastic anime, which form the foundation of my creative and research pursuits. Next, we will move to the definition of screendance, which will lead into an analysis of two Polish works that exemplify the balance between music and choreography. I will conclude my paper with some final remarks. Emil Jacques Dalcroze, a comprehensively educated Swiss composer, pianist, pedagogue, and conductor, secured his place in history as the creator of eurythmics, a concept of music education aimed at cultivating a conscious viewer and performer of high art. The foundation of his method is grounded in three integral components: eurythmics combined with plastic anime, solfège, and improvisation. At the initiative of Wolf and Harold Dawn, wealthy and broadly educators, patrons of arts, the Institute for Music and Rhythm was erected in Helena, a facility custom designed for this new concept of music education. It was precisely this moment in history, marked by the artistic collaboration between Emil Jacques Dalcroze and the eminent scenographer and theatre reformer Adolf Appia, that transcended the boundaries of pure pedagogy, unlocking a new, deeply artistic dimension. Its ultimate goal was to complete the transposition of a musical work's structure and expression into the language of dance. This profound dependence is insightfully defined by Barbara Turska, who writes, "Music is blind, movement is mute. By creating a musical movement whole, we simultaneously affect both the sense of hearing and sight. As a result, music becomes as it were visible, and movement as it were audible. Information about the whole and its inner substance is received through two channels concurrently, rendering a dual stimulus, a more intense perception, fuller information, and a deeper understanding." End of quote. It must be emphasized, however, that within a historical context, music and dance entered into a fluid relationship. The nature of their connection is determined by the dominance of one form of expression over the other, their mutual intertwining and complementation, or the total independence of these artistic phenomena. Dance creators and performers are called upon to express the human experience, deepen social reflection, reinterpret insights, break boundaries, and constantly align themselves with new media. For this reason, choreographers approach the art of sound from either a subjectifying or objectifying perspective. Emil Jacques Dalcroze's polyphonic union of music and dance, though highly esteemed and eagerly practiced, was marginalized with the fading of the modernist spirit. It returns in interpretation that strive to do it justice, yet the task is far from easy. How can the synthesis of music and dance be redefined to resonate with the sensibility expectations of the contemporary viewer? How can music be expressed in dance, in mobility and depth without empty emphasis or exhibitionism, its naturalness without sentimentality? The essence and significance of contemporary art are profoundly influenced by technological advancement, the continuous evolution of which shapes the sensory perception of the audience. The photographic experiments of Edward Muybridge, conducted in the late 19th century, captured motion and pioneered the development of cinematography. Either evoking film technology combined with programming methods used to describe and generate the movement of graphic objects has exerted a tremendous impact of the art of dance, providing an impetus for new forms of artistic expression. Dance, initially merely recorded, began to adopt the language of new medium alongside the advancement of analog digital tools, presenting the audience with a continuum of images that operate within the material constraints of forms, movement, sequential events, and space. Czarek, a Polish choreographer and dance theorist, defined screendance as an artistic genre that has been developing since the 1940s, primarily in the United States of America, Canada, and Europe. It encompasses a wide spectrum of feature-length and short film forms with dance themes, the documentation of dance, the use of dance for commercial purposes, or autonomous works in which the language of film is inaccessibly intertwined with the language of dance. End of quote. Zbigniew Czoczot-Gawrak notes that thanks to the screen, both ancient and contemporary art have gained opportunities for new, fascinating transformations and hitherto unknown forms of integration, but above all, a chance for a new social expansion, the potential to reach not merely hundreds of thousands, but hundreds of millions. End of quote. Through the deconstruction of the image, its selection, accentuation, or reduction, these creators strive to expand the sensory and intellectual experience of art. They firmly ground their artistic endeavors with a site-specific paradigm where the authentic space of the film set plays a pivotal role. This is perfectly captured by the words of Łukasz Wójcicki. Site-specific projects fulfill the need to move beyond the institutional boundaries of art, outside the theater or gallery, from the core of art, its margins. End of quote. Consequently, traditional backdrops, whether realistic, aestheticized, or symbolic, give way to an environment with which dance enters into a direct, organic dialogue. From the perspective of my presentation, the polyphonic viewing of three independent artistic disciplines, music, choreography, and the moving image, acquires a constitutive significance. Today, I will present to you two distinct creative strategies that lead to the generation of visible sound within screendance. In the first work of my own authorship, the choreography was directed toward reflecting Witold Lutosławski's intentions, the cycle for the analysis and interpretation of the Sacher Variation for solo cello. Here, music fulfills a par excellence form-giving function. This is a traditional approach, deeply rooted in the Dalcrozian idea of the embodiment of sound. The second creative model is represented by Joanna Wawik's composition for Monika Szpunar's choreography, which was recorded in silence. In this case, the sonic material from the film 100 meters was sourced directly from the space of the film set, as well as from the dancer's body and movement. Although the composer draws on the experience gained from the education in Emil Jacques rhythmics, she deliberately redefines its orthodox frameworks, abandoning all formal constraints. I grounded my work, which is a film-based movement interpretation of Witold Lutosławski's Sacher Variation, in Mieczysław Tomaszewski's method of integral interpretation. As Małgorzata Janicka-Słysz emphasized, this scholar revolutionized music theory and musicology, postulating the necessity of listening intently to what the work has to say. From him, the ideal became a researcher who experiences music by opening themselves with sensitivity and imagination to its meanings, truth, and message. He attached great importance to ethos. He compiled a list of values lost and reclaimed in Polish music, among which were notably a sense of freedom, beauty, and the sacred dimension. They are meant to be, as he used to say, give food for thought. Because music, he reiterated, is a manifestation of culture, an expression of man's spiritual life and personality. End of quote. It's around the ontology of the musical work understood in this way that I concert my own artistic pursuits. Witold Lutosławski compared music to mathematics, considering it an equally complex, highly organized, and abstract world. An intellectual factor played a vital role in his creative process, where the logic of sound organization cannot be fully grasped through auditory perception alone. He composed the Sacher Variation in 1975 at the request of Mścisław Rostropovich to celebrate the 70th birthday of Paul Sacher. Witold Lutosławski's Sacher Variation is a linearly shaped single movement work that represents the composer's mature creative phase. The point of convergence between this cello miniature and Lutosławski's major and late period works is the application of a broadly defined pitch strategy. This strategy consists in assigning selected pitches to one voice in relation to the pitches levels of the second voice. A prime example of which are 6-note sets known as hexachords. The architecture of this piece is based on two alternating melodic rhythmic strands contrasted in terms of dynamics, articulation, and expression. The main theme of the variation constitutes on sonic cryptogrammic interpretation of Paul Sacher's name, and its subsequent statements are interspersed with a second contrasting motif based on the material of the complementary hexachord and microtonal inflections. Please allow me to present selected excerpts from my work. Proceed to the next work, composed by Joanna Babik for Monika Szpunar's choreography. Joanna Babik is an experimental composer, accompanist, performer, and architect. Monika Szpunar, in turn, is an independent dancer, performer, and choreographer. The artists draw mutual inspiration from each other's work, which is beautifully reflected in the words of Maria Gołaszewska. Between a work of art and the viewer, there exists a kind of dialogue, an exchange of values. The value acts upon the human being who comes into contact with the work of art, while the individual's personal traits serve as a factor that brings specific values to light from within the work, casting a reflection back onto it. End of quote. Szpunar created choreography captured in a single continuous long take, utilizing diverse perspectives and camera shots. As the film set for her artistic creation titled 100 meters, she chose the road space of an industrial tunnel in the new administrative center in Krakow. The dancer's movement evokes the loneliness experienced at different stages of grief. The stage is continuous and poignant, which found direct expression in the decision to forego montagist cuts. The musical layer is entirely based on the original soundscape of the tunnel. It incorporates, among other elements, the ambient noise, the sound of peeling paint from the walls, strikes against the radiator, the sounds of footsteps and running, as well as words spoken by the performer, captured by an intra-conchal microphone. The composition evolved in close dialogue with choreographer. The artist's mutual inspiration resulted in a profound synergy of image and sound, grounded in unconditional acceptance, creative freedom, and deep respect for collaborative work. I would now like to present a fragment of this work. have shared with you only two ways of granting agency to music. In the first instance, the choreography was created based on an in-depth analysis and interpretation of the musical piece, which was then transposed into dance and the moving image. This serves an example of traditional approach to Emil Jacques idea of visible sound. In the second creative scenario, the choreography was performed in silence, then recorded and edited, and finally, the music score was composed for it. Screen dance creates a world imbued with an exceptionally intense expression and a unique unparalleled dynamism. It's as much an artistic phenomenon as it's one of the pivotal nexuses in the history of art. It merges three independent disciplines: music, choreography, and the moving image. Depending on the shift of emphasis, it either defines the artistic uniqueness or, conversely, inverts their meaning and charts a transformation so that in a completed creation, they remain mere echo of the whole. This transgressive medium externalizes, reshapes, and transforms the creator's inner reality, driven to bring forth subtle, non-explicit qualities. Its destiny is to directly engage the contemporary art viewer by passing full consciousness to resonate on both an emotional and intellectual level. Thank you very much for your time and for your